Thank you. Thank you for joining us. We are recording this and it will go out as a follow-up email for you to share with your teams, or anyone that's not on that registered will receive that as well. But today, I hope you're not skipping lunch. I hope that you're actually having lunch, but joined in for a conversation and listening to Grant County and Washington County's story about their local accountability journey. And you may hear that also referred to as local measures of quality. But what's happening around that in their communities will be our focus today. And oh, if we can just make sure we're on mute. Yeah, thanks. Welcome. So our featured guest today from Grant County is Superintendent Todd Moody. Todd, if you'll wave for everyone, yeah. And his public relation officer, Danielle Haley. Haven't seen Danielle join yet.
She's here in the office with me, so
okay.
She'll jump in if she needs to.
And you'll be seeing her face there with Mr. Moody as well. And from Washington County, we have Superintendent Dr. Robin Cochran and Holly Elmore. She's their Chief Academic Officer, and you can see they're in the room together and they're waving. Thank you guys so much for joining us for this first Lunch and Learn. This is a focus on the local leadership, and it's a midday exchange to just share the stories of what's going on, share ideas. Let me go ahead and share. We've got just a few slides. You won't see a slideshow during this, but you'll just have a few slides for context and just the session format. So I just introduced the guest. Alexa, can you give me a thumbs up if you can see the slideshow? Okay, thank you. And you can see our guests and where they're coming from. And just for the format of the hour here together. In which you'll just sit back and listen to the conversation between Grant County Administration and Washington County Administration. We will go through their story, hit on all of the big ideas of innovation, and then we will open up the last 20-ish minutes for a question-answer section from everyone who's joined in here today. And during that time, you will be invited to unmute and ask directly or put in the chat. But I do ask that we hold all questions and jot them down as we're listening for the first section of this session during the conversation piece, so that we can really give them our full attention. And then once we open up for questions, we'll put those in the chat at the same time. And we'll unmute and ask the questions. So you'll definitely be invited at that time. So note any questions, any burning topics that you want to circle back to when you hear their great stories. I will say you will hear and feel in districts in the how KDE defines innovation is relative to the context of the district, and it's how we are improving schools in student learning experiences and their outcomes, district by district context. And it comes in 3 ideas, and I kind of mentioned that briefly just a second ago, but just to elaborate on that more, the United We Learn vision includes vibrant learning for every student, innovation in assessment, and collaboration with communities. So those 3 big ideas we'll be bringing out in the conversations today. And those are things that you'll want to listen for, along with the joy of learning and teaching that's happening in Grant County and Washington County around these community shifts. So thank you for being on, and that is my introduction. So we'll get right into Grant County's context with Mr. Moody and Ms. Haley. And I'll switch the slide.
Okay, I appreciate that introduction. I am Todd Moody, the superintendent. This is my public information officer, Danielle Haley. Grant County Schools is a relatively small district. We're made up of about 3,100 students. We have 4 elementary schools. We have one middle school. We have one high school. We're about 40 minutes south of Cincinnati, so we're between Scott County and as our southern border, and then we have Boone and Kenton to our northern border, and we're sandwiched in between Owen and Pendleton, just to give you an idea of where in the state we are. One of the things that we're most proud of is we have our own career and tech center that is attached to our high school, and we feel like that makes us a little bit unique. We have 12 CTE pathways offered at that high school. So it's a wonderful opportunities for our students to be able to explore some real career interests without having to leave campus and without even having to go outside to get that experience. We've also increased our dual credit opportunities and offerings, and so we're pretty proud of that. We have 3 main municipalities and a lot of countryside that feeds into our district. So we have the communities of Corinth, Dry Ridge, and Crittenden, and we do have a neighbor. Williamstown Independent is located in Grant County, but they chose in 1954 not to join the consolidation. So we respect them for their decision in that, and they're great neighbors. So I'll talk a little bit about the images on the slide that you see. When we get into the story, I'll kind of give you a lot more background on these items. But the work that we did actually started to the left there with the Grant County Schools Profile of a Graduate. That work started actually before I got to the district, and that was in 2018-19. I became superintendent a couple of years ago, and the far right image is a picture of our strategic plan. So that took place last year. And then in the bottom, you see the landing page for our accountability dashboard and our 3 pillars of growth, community, and success. So I think that's everything you wanted me to cover. Is that correct, Brandy? I'm happy to go deeper if I need to.
Yes, thank you for that context from Grant County. And now we'll learn about Washington County's context.
So Washington County is centrally located between Lexington and Louisville. When people ask where we are, I'll say, look at the map, and we're like right in the middle. I think that makes us the great place to be. And of course, I think it's, we have about 1,800 students, preschool through 12th grade. We have one high school, one K-8 building or preschool through 8th grade building. It's out in the county. We have one elementary, one middle school, and then we have one alternative school. We also, kind of like Mr. Moody said, we have a CTE ATC that we developed a couple of years ago with a grant from the state, and it has a couple of pathways in it, but we also feed into the Marion County ATC. So we have the best of both worlds, I like to say, where we have our little mini hybrid model for that design. I think one thing that makes us unique is that our individualization and personalization of learning is second to none. We have 8 different partnerships with different universities. We try to use the students' individual learning pathways to create partnerships that allow them to think about post-secondary next steps and what their vision is and where they want to go. And we're just really excited to be able to share our story with everyone today.
Thank you. And I'm going to ask Jennifer Young. I'd like to introduce her as well. She is the one that has connected all of these stories as a regional innovation specialist. So Jennifer, if you can come off video and let everyone see your face. She services the central part of our state and those counties and school districts. And so she works with these 2 districts and has brought them to us today. Thank you, Jennifer, for connecting everyone today.
Thank you very much.
All right, so we're excited to get into these stories. So I'm going to start with Grant County. What prompted you to begin this work in your district to start shifting toward local accountability or local measures of quality for your students?
Yes, as I indicated before, the work on the profile of a learner, profile of a graduate, began before I came to the district. I actually entered the district into the 2019-20 school year as an elementary school principal. So I was impressed by the profile work, and then everything got paused when we had to shut down for COVID. But I always found the work to be exciting and interesting, and I was started in the district as an elementary school principal and searched for opportunities to have vibrant learning experiences in elementary school, even though I didn't know that was the right name for it at the time. But really, passion projects, student-based interests, opportunities for extension and exposure to all students to do that. And then going to the high school as principal for a couple of years before becoming superintendent, I was blown away by the work that was occurring in our CTE, and found that in many ways it was the best kept secret in our community, and really wanted to do everything I could to keep that from being a secret moving forward, because it was unlike any facility that I had seen. And while I was there, we did a huge welding lab expansion and a complete remodel of the culinary kitchen to a really professional grade setup. So that was exciting. Then I became superintendent, and I remember specifically before starting in July, I met with the board at a retreat in March just to kind of get a plan and a path of what the expectations were, and to make sure that we were on the same page. And one of the things that the board kept bringing up to me during that meeting was, we obviously want our academics to improve. We want every kid to be successful, but there are so many things in our school district that aren't measured on a once a year or a snapshot in time type of test. They just charged me with, how can we tell a broader story that better captures all the great things that are happening? And we don't want to embellish those stories, but how can we communicate to our community all the great things that they had been firsthand observers of what was happening within the Grant County School District. So another thing that we focused on during that meeting was the need, especially since the pandemic, to regain community trust. And when I was named, I would say that morale and trust was at a low, and that wasn't through anyone's fault. That was just kind of the state of the world at that time. So the board was very excited for any opportunity that we could embrace to kind of develop partnerships again with our local community, to build that trust, to invite them into our buildings, and to give them a full view of who we were as a school district. And we betted that they would be proud of what we have to offer if they knew the full story. So when I became superintendent, the first day I held my first town hall, and my first step was to kind of just review the facts. And I had Danielle here help me put together a deck of slides that we pulled from the school report card and some other sources. And I remember telling the community that this is not condemnation, this is information. This is full transparency of where we are. And then we held an opportunity for a public comment, and we got a lot of feedback, some passionate feedback during that town hall. And then we also did a survey, and part of that survey were questions that we had predetermined that we wanted specific information about, and then there was some open-ended questions. And that was so successful, we held another one because it was in July and not everyone was able to attend, so we wanted to make it as open as possible. So we held another town hall, very similar format, had local legislators attend. So we felt really good about what we saw in terms of public turnout to those meetings. And we got some really great responses. If I'm not mistaken, I believe we got somewhere between 450 and 500 responses, which for our community was very strong. So I got really excited about that. And so I decided we have enough information here that we can build a strategic plan based on the feedback that we were receiving. We shared it with all of our staff at opening day. We published it on our social media outlets. We did everything we could to get as many responses as we could. And then I just did an open invitation for committee work to begin. And what we were going to do was take a look at those survey results, take a look at that data, and then come up with some goals and build out a strategic plan. and it was really great. The first meeting that we had a couple of meetings, and both meetings we had representation from community members, parents, classified and certified staff. So it really was a cross section of our county and our community that was providing input, and we were able to identify 4 big main ideas and take some specific language to set some goals under each one of those ideas. And then I presented that to the board in January of my first year. And we set another retreat date that we were going to refine that. And so when the board got a hold of what we had put together, one of the things they kept telling me was, this doesn't make a whole lot of sense to me. We want this plan to make sense to a 5th grader. So they really challenged me and pushed back on me to take the education language out of it. And so it goes back to that desire of engaging the community and making sure that we built trust. So we worked together, and I think we did a pretty good job of making it just everyday common language that everybody can understand, regardless of their perspective of school districts and school systems. And so we felt great about that. So then I say all that to set the context for how I was pushed into, is what I'll say, pursuing local accountability. I knew that I was excited for Commissioner Fletcher to be in his position as a former Kentucky school superintendent. And so Danielle worked with me to invite him to our opening day. And unfortunately, he had already had a commitment and was not able to attend our opening day, but was gracious enough to say that I'd be more than happy to come visit your district. So we set up a visit from Commissioner Fletcher in early August, just a few days into school. And while he was with me, we had a conversation. I shared with him some of the work that we had done, and his response to me at that time was, "I think you're ready for local accountability," which was not a response that I was expecting. So I just kind of listened to him, and we went around to several buildings and viewed some of our classrooms and students. And every time we got in the truck, I won't forget, he kept talking to me about examples of districts with local accountability. You know, it'd be Fleming County or some maybe Shelby County, and talked about some of the things that Kenton County had done, how they were reporting some of their information with their community. So he was very persistent, I'll say, in making sure that I was up to speed on what the possibilities for local accountability could look like. And then we ended that day with him speaking to our board members and all of our district administrators at the transportation building in a big meeting space. And during that time, he took the opportunity to share the local accountability philosophy with our district administrators and our school board. So following that meeting, I made a commitment to our board that by January of this year, we would have our own model and our own dashboard up and running. So did some work with them. We identified our 3 pillars, which was basically served as a funnel for the goals of our strategic plan. And so then Danielle was able to work, she does all of our website work, and was able to put together a dashboard that we feel very good that our community understands. We even had the local paper come do a story on it, and she commented on how the fact that that reporter was not an educator, but she felt like the communication through that dashboard was very clear. And I want to say that it's not perfect, and I refuse to wait until it was perfect to implement it. And Danielle, we had conversations back and forth, and she would say, "Well, what about this? What about this?" And I said, "Well, we can put what we have out, and if we want to add to it along the journey, I don't think there's any restriction about that, and we will certainly continue to refine. We understand that it's not perfect, but we think the intent it comes through, and I feel strong that our school board understands the purpose of it and can use it in conversations with our community." I also want to say that after Commissioner Fletcher's visit, I was contacted by OVEC and was fortunate enough to be invited to participate in some local accountability work. And I absolutely jumped at the chance to do that because I had no idea if anything I had done was correct or not. So I found that experience to be very affirming, and I've received some great ideas on how we can refine, but appreciate the opportunity through OVEC and NextGen to be able to check my thinking, so to speak, and develop some colleagues from around different parts of the state, and be able to talk out loud and learn from other districts and folks at other districts who are grappling with the same questions that we've been grappling with these past 2 years.
Thank you, Mr. Moody. Grant County's story is different than Washington. You'll hear that. Mr. Moody and his team have done this in 2 years. That they have done this work and now reaching out to partners. So we would love to hear. Mr. Moody took us through his story, how he engaged community and some systems changes even. So Washington County, the floor is yours to take us through what prompted you to start this work and anything you want to reflect on as Mr. Moody has for Grant County.
Thank you. So we started also with a strategic plan about 4 years ago. We were in a room with about 100 community members and different shareholders. And it started as a conversation about what we really wanted to produce for our community from the high school. And so through that, we decided that we would do a 4-year strategic plan. And then what we realized is we were watching forward-thinking districts across the state as a part of L3. And so we applied to be a part of that work. So we had a seat at the table to take this idea that was on paper and to bring it to fruition and to add a process to that so that we could make this a reality for our district. And we started out with just different iterations of student celebrations of learning. That was important for us, that we wanted to be a positive experience for our students. And so second graders, fifth graders, eighth graders, and 12th graders would create a celebration of the competencies and the evidence that they had to show their growth, and also to talk about their plans for improvement in different areas.
I think it's also important to add, just what she said. We were coming to the table and talking amongst ourselves and talking about how we knew what the what was, what we wanted to accomplish and where we wanted to go. We weren't real sure how. And so when we started hearing what L3 brought to the table and the multiple measures and the way of looking at more than just a test score, but what the community valued and what parents said were important to them and what student voice led us to say, gosh, we need to look at this and this and this. The L3 work and the Kentucky United We Learn work, and there was one more, the deeper learning, all of those things put together, it just made sense. And that was at the same time that our family friendly work was going on over here. And so we said, it's not more, it's the right thing. It's the direction that we're headed. It's the how. And so we began to get really excited about the momentum of, we were really good at putting things on paper, like for the strategic plan and teasing those steps out and so forth. But the monitoring piece and the actionable steps just weren't happening. And that falls on me as the leader. I get it. But the other thing is bringing people along with you is essential to the process. And so when all those things started working together and we started listening to what other people were saying, we were like, that's the how, that's the work, that's the work. And so I think the discourse and the back and forth of asking people, what do you think about this? And what do you think about that? And realizing we thought we knew the answer to several things. We had no clue until that voice and that empowerment of other people started coming to the table and talking to us about where the direction, and it shifted many, many times. We shifted in our thinking and the student growth is what we started to see come from it.
So Washington County, Holly, Dr. Cochran, can you all elaborate on some systems changes that you saw with that growth?
So we felt that it was very important to increase shared responsibility of building the system as we were going through the process. And we started with deeper learning strategies and went into schools. And as a district, we created a district PLC where our academic division went in and pressed into each school once a month. And so that way, every teacher across the district was having the same opportunity for the professional learning, but also to have their voice heard and provide input on the products that we were creating. So what that looked like is we started out, and to be completely transparent, on a snow day, AI and I sat down and created some rubrics around the competencies and what that looks like for a second grader, a fifth grader, an eighth grader, and a 12th grader. But that gave us the ability to go to the teachers and say, this is what we think it looks like. Give us your feedback. And we refined the language, and we made it developmentally appropriate for each grade level, talking about what was the language and the vocabulary that we wanted to lift out of that so that we could have vibrant learning experiences in our classrooms. Then we allowed teachers to identify what are the things you're already doing, or what could you tweak. This is not an addition, it's what we do, it's who we are. So how can we take and make what you're doing, what do you want to commit to? And so we had teachers identify commitments at each grade level for every one of the competencies. And we put that on paper and said, okay, now we have evidence that students have opportunities to grow within our building. So that gave teachers, they saw their voice immediately. And so then we were able to take and press out to the community and talk about what they could expect from students in each of those competencies at each grade level.
I think another addition to that I'm thinking about as she talks is that when we had those 100 people in the room, we thought, okay, we've got so many voices. They didn't know what to do or say, there was nothing to react to. So we saw our numbers start to dwindle when we had additional meetings because they didn't feel like there wasn't anything for them to do. And they said, well, you all are the educators. And we started to lose their voice. They didn't see how they were going to be empowered. And what was a real mind shift for me was the competencies were developed we had a team leadership group that came together, and they were the ones that gave us the original competencies for us to react to. We did surveys with the community, and we listed out all of the competencies that came to mind. And then the kids helped us say, these are our top ones. Then we rolled it. It's almost like we did it backwards. That if you think about design thinking, we started with the end in mind, and then we started asking people, what do you like about this, or do you not like about this? But it was the students, it was the high school students that helped us develop what it looked like and sound like, and what our commander ready attributes, like what we're going to do, what we're going to commit to. And then parents came back to the table and they said, we'll show up for this because we can tell you what it looks like and sounds like, because you already have it on paper for us. And I think that is a difference that we didn't see. We thought that they had to help us build the ship, when really they needed to help us, design what it looked like once that foundation and framework was built. Students are the ones who really deserve all the credit for that part.
Thank you. And I'll be sharing in a follow-up email with everyone links that they have shared to their dashboard and their competencies, and how they've broke it down, each one of their competencies of their portrait of a learner, into grade band appropriate steps. And so that's a big strength of your all system in Washington County. Grant County, with your profile of a graduate with Succeed, how did, as you started building this and making it part of your district, how did that change your systems, and what challenges may you have faced with those changes so far?
Well, I would say the greatest single impact that work leveraged was unification of what we were trying to accomplish. And I know that I would say that that work helped our HQIR implementation because it provided a framework of, look, we want to work towards a set of defined outcomes, and so that created a model so that when we did everything else, we understood why things had to be in alignment and why we had to have continuity from top to bottom. So as we went through that succeed work in the second iteration, one of the things that we identified is that we really didn't have a plan for our middle grades students, and we didn't have a plan for our elementary grades students. So while we have defenses of learning now, we just started this last year for 5th grade, 8th grade, and 12th grade. What I was most impressed by the committee for identifying is they have grade level specific language that is true to the competencies identified in our Succeed profile, but it is presented in such a way with exemplars so that first graders understand what being self-aware means to a first grader. And of course, it's going to look very different to an 8th grader and then again to a 12th grader. So the thing that excites me most about the impact of that work is that alignment piece. And so when it was time for us to adopt HQIRs, and we have alignment now for the first time, K-12 in both reading and math. It's not a perfect alignment in reading, but we're pretty close and we feel good about where we are. We're able to have similar conversations about why it is so important that we all speak a common language and that it is a cyclical scaffold for our students, that they have, if they're going to be competitive, they have to have the opportunities to interact in the same kinds of ways and the same kinds of challenges and productive struggles under the same vocabulary and terminology and strategies, rather than go to an effective teacher, and that teacher may do great with that class for a year and send them on to another teacher, but that alignment's not there, and so it's hard to measure how effective we were being as a district. So I think the Succeed work really forced us to take a look at our success as a district, not just pockets of primary versus intermediate or middle or high school. And so that's what excites me the most about that, is that if we can take this profile of what we want a Grant County High School graduate to be able to do and what we say as a community are essential skills for their future success, and we can track that from 12th grade down to kindergarten. Standards ought to be easy by comparison because we didn't have to do the work to develop those standards. And so we just have to implement, interpret, and support the standards. And I don't know if that specifically addressed your question, but that's certainly what excites me most about it.
Yes, absolutely does. And again, a strength in that you're taking it down to the student level. What does succeed mean for each grade level? So a similarity between Grant County and Washington County there for sure. Washington County, you have an extensive dashboard. Can you tell about just that's a big systems change, and possibly can you talk through that change with your community and how it's used, how you can talk about how it's developed, how it's used, and you mentioned monitoring. So can you take us a little deeper into that?
Both kind of play off of this, but when we were developing it, I think one of the pitfalls that we got into quickly was we wanted it to be perfect. We kept going back and forth, going, but we're not ready, but we've got to take the first step. But we don't have this, but they're going to think that it's incomplete. And finally, we just said, we've got to do it. You've got to take that first step. You've got to put something out there and get feedback. And one thing that was really helpful was to have a listening session with some of other superintendents and KASA. There was a group of us that were together where we started talking about our return on investment. You know, we want to hear what the community feels like are their return on investment. You know, like when they pay their taxes, what are they getting back for their taxes? Not just kids that graduate or go to public school, but what are they getting as a result of of where their funding is going and that type of thing. And I had never really thought deeply about that piece of it. And so we talked about the value for having students take dual credit. We had over 600 dual credit courses taken in a year when we looked at some of our data and our measures and so forth. And we started talking about how that translates to a great return on investment for parents for kids that are going on to post-secondary and having to pay for college at a much higher rate. And then we started talking about scholarships and things that kids are able to that. One of the biggest eye-opening experiences with the family-friendly work was when we asked parents about like preschoolers and things like that, they started talking about mealtime. And we had not, that was not on our radar. We thought they wanted strategies for teaching them to read and recognize their letters and numbers. But instead they said, we need help with mealtime. How do you get them to eat at school and the meals that you serve? So we put meals on our dashboard because they wanted to know what were the kids' favorite meals and what did they enjoy eating. We started surveying kids in our cafeteria to learn who knew General Tso's chicken. They wanted orange chicken and General Tso's chicken. You know, we had never served that before. And so those, while you think that that doesn't affect the learning environment, kids that eat and kids that are happy, it translates to learning in the classroom. And so we started seeing those types of return on investment. Chronic absenteeism, when we focused on that and the parent voice and so forth, it shot way up. I mean, we reduced it by, was it 13% across the district, you know, in 1 year. And so that was because parents started coming to the table and talking to us about what their hopes and dreams were for their kiddos and things like that. Finding ways to measure it on the dashboard is sometimes the creative aspect of it. However, I think you get a much better picture than just saying Sally is proficient or Jeremy is a novice in that area. But when you can talk about what they can say and do, you want to tell the story about the kiddo with the diving lesson?
Yeah, I can.
Yeah.
So in our first round of student celebrations, we had a senior who was in the alternative school. He had made some fun choices and had a good time at school. And so he had a change in location. And what we realized when that student stood up to present, he had 7 different scuba diving certificates. He was a leathersmith and made belts and wallets. And he also, on the weekends, was an aviation mechanic with his grandfather. And no one knew that. And so what we have learned is that sometimes in our efforts to make sure everyone's proficient, we miss what they really bring to the table. And so it was a self-reflection for us as administrators to say, what are we doing? You know, we pride ourselves on being family friendly. We're small. We know every student's name, but do we know them? And this has provided that avenue for us to really get to know our students and to celebrate them, not just at what they're doing at school, but what they're doing in their lives outside of our 4 walls. And we don't always have to provide all of the experiences, but we can celebrate them. And growth is growth. You know, that was important for us, is we considered defenses of learning or presentations of learning. We want to celebrate our students, no matter what their background is, no matter their experiences. Who are we to measure their growth and say that it was good enough or not? And so that was something that was very, very important for us to say, we want to celebrate you. And we're excited about however you're growing, or the fact that you can say, I'm not very good at this, but this is what I'm going to do to get better. It's important.
That was eye-opening. Last year, I had a 2nd grader talk about her reading scores, and she turned around and looked at me, and I thought, well, I don't know why you're looking at me, but anyway, she turned around and looked at me and she said, but I'm going to get better because I'm going to do this strategy next year. And so the fact that she felt like she had a plan, doesn't matter what my plan is for her. It's the fact that her plan, and she is the ownership of her plan, and she knows where she's going in her next steps, like what she needs to be doing in order to see her own learning progress. And we're just the vessels to help her get there. That's what our role is.
As for the process for the dashboard, it is not It is not fancy and it's not expensive. We have a Google sheet, and every piece of data that we want is listed, and we have put a person there that owns that piece of data. And I send it out quarterly, and I give them about a week after grades are posted to report their data. And then we have two different versions of the dashboard. We have a tile version that our tech team has automated that pulls from that spreadsheet. But then we also have the Canva that I take that data and I try to put it into an infographic. So depending upon what better serves purposes, there are two different ways to look at the same information. It gives us a creativity outlet for different pieces. I will say that if you go on there right now, all of quarter two doesn't look just like quarter one data. We're not just repeating, but what is important at that time of the year, what people need to know at that time of the year, is kind of how we have approached that. And it's not perfect. You'll go on there and you'll see changes, but just on a technical side, we link the Canva presentation. And as you update it, it automatically updates it on the website. So you're not having to like save and repost and do all of that. And we also found that it was really important to only have it posted in like one location, not having to like repost in many different locations on your website. So if everything can go to one direct location, that helps.
It makes it more manageable for your district. I mean, some districts are really large and have people that do just that work. But if you're a small district, we're small, we're rural, we don't have a lot of people, it allows for that, consistency across platforms.
Thank you for sharing. And I know we should be going into our question answer section of the session right now, but I did want to open it back up to Grant County. If you have anything else to elaborate on, any challenges or unexpected stories that you might want to tell through your process, we'd love to hear it.
Well, the most unexpected thing for us, I think, is we weren't real sure how much community participation we would get, and I feel like that people really showed up and really took the opportunity to have a voice. I think that was something that was a desire for a long time, and then I think funneling all that information that we gathered through those meetings was a bit of a challenge, and we really had to take a look at the data multiple times, especially the open-ended questions, to kind of categorize and develop themes from that to be able to make sure that we captured what the community was saying that they valued. And then probably another, and Danielle can talk about this if she would like, but keeping the dashboard simple enough that it's manageable. And not trying to tell everything, but really connecting it back to the goals of that strategic plan and those pillars identified by the board. There are so much information that we could share with our community, but what I found to be particularly challenging was we just want to share the information that we're focused on. And I borrow this quote from someone else, and I don't know who said it exactly, but I heard it once. The problem with the desert isn't that there's no direction available to you, it's that every direction is available to you. And so sometimes it's hard just to set a beacon on the horizon line and start walking towards it. So we just had to eventually decide that these are our beacons, and we're just going to walk towards that, and we're not going to let anything else distract us. And when we have a reiteration of this, or when we take a look at it and redevelop it, I think that that provides the opportunity to see if we want to expand. But I like the constraint of a strategic plan because it does give you a defined time frame, and then I think it allows for a revisit. Danielle, do you want to talk anything about the publication? I do want to say this real quickly. I was specific in choosing Danielle as my partner in this work because I have some very talented and very bright people that work in areas of chief academic officer and DPP. But Danielle has been our public information officer. She was also a Frisky coordinator and has had those kinds of roles. And so I knew that she would relay the message in a way that our community would understand, and that she had boots on the ground experience. So she really understood what our community would respond to in terms of the development. So I specifically partnered with her rather than some of my other strong players, because I felt like a lot of that information that our chief academic officer and DPP deal with is already accessible through a school report card or a KDE website. But I'll let Danielle say something if she'd like.
So much like Washington County, our dashboard doesn't cost us a penny. We use Google Sites, and so each of our pillars, our growth, community, and success, are broken down into a Google site, so our community can easily access that information and see and delve deep into the sections that they would like to know more information about. I think that's important that they have the access to all of the many things that they could look at, but being able to provide them with just an overview on the dashboard, as I think something that's important to our families, because they want to know that it's available, but they don't necessarily want it all at once. So being able to provide the dashboard split up that way was helpful for us.
Thank you. And as you hear, community differentiation and the importance of partnerships in the state and within the district, different entry points we just heard, much different entry points, but a lot of commonality. Discourse. I really like the way that Dr. Cochran brought out the importance for discourse among other districts and thought partners. The dashboards, you have two different examples. Free. They're both free. There's a commonality. So thank you all for sharing today. We're getting ready to go into our question answer section of the session. But I really wanted to take a minute and just say thank you. I know we could talk about this for hours because you have done so much work within your community with these shifts, and we appreciate you coming on to capture a little bit of the shifts here today. So if anybody wants to give a reaction emoji, interact at this time, this is the time that we're going to start putting our questions into the chat. And then also, if anybody would like to unmic and talk directly, this is our time to start interacting with our featured guests here today from Grant County and Washington County. And Jennifer, I will look to you as if questions start coming in to unmic and kind of recap.
Yes, I'm monitoring the chat. So if you guys have any questions you want to put in the chat, I'll be monitoring the chat.
Maybe we don't have questions. Yeah, go ahead.
Not yet, but while I'm taking a look at that, I just kudos to both of you. Thank you so much for coming on and sharing your story. I know you've had an opportunity to share your story with me, and I'm so thankful that we have this platform for you to be able to share your story with others now. One thing I did want to ask out of both of you, if there was one piece of advice that you feel like is probably the most important piece of advice that you have for a district who is leaning into this work but is kind of on the fence of completely jumping in, what would that piece of advice be?
I don't mind to start. I would say that there are so many supports available to you. I was unaware of those supports, so I'm very grateful that I received that invitation through OVEC to be a part of that community and invited to the L3 work and next gen work, because I am finding that there are so many districts that are in a similar spot or have already taken a journey further than I've been. And the people that have done the work are absolutely excited to talk about the work. And I don't think anybody is trying to present the work as something that's been perfected, but it has been great learning for anybody that's been involved. And I have found that people have been so generous in sharing what mistakes or missteps they may have made or what didn't go as predicted. And so don't be afraid to reach out to your colleagues and to other districts, because I have found that everyone gets excited about the opportunity to share their particular journey and will help you in any way that you can develop your own story and I know you said one, but I'm going to tack another thing onto that. It's truly your story. One thing that I figured out quickly is I couldn't replicate Fleming County's story. I couldn't replicate Kenton County's story. Grant County is unique unto itself, and rather than hide that fact, I leaned into celebrating that fact, and so I wanted our story to be truly reflect the things that make us unique.
I think as you lead the work, just start small. It doesn't have to be overwhelming to your staff, and there are many resources, and there are people who will help walk you through that. Also, I felt like I always had to have a lot of people at the table, and sometimes it was just good to at least have a table and invite people to the table, but you still have to do the work even if others aren't there. So
I think for me, be prepared to have thick skin. Behavior is not personal unless you make it. And so sometimes things come out with this work that you thought you were doing well, and you realize maybe I'm not. We realized at one point last year, we thought we were doing something really well. We obviously weren't because of the feedback that we got. And so we were like, well, this is fixable. This is, we can do this. We can make this better. We didn't know that it needed to be made better. So being prepared to kind of like what Todd said, it is our story to tell because these are our people and we are their people and all the things. But you don't also get to tell a parent or a community member how they feel, or how they see things. So let them come to the table and let them talk. And you might change their mind about some things when they get more information about you, but then they also might change your mind. And you might decide to go a different direction based on a perception, because our lens is all different and how we all come to the table is different. And so just lean into that and be prepared to have an open mind, be very, very open about the possibilities and the measures that it leads you, where the work leads you. I think that's the other piece of it makes this so much better than just the traditional assessment methods. If I have time to say that, because when you're measured, when it's a norm reference test and stuff, all of that has its place. Yes, we need those measures and so forth. But obviously, how I measure myself against her or those types of things, at the end of the day, it doesn't really matter if she has better hair than me or whatever. If I like my hair and she likes her hair, then we should be good to go. A lot of times those traditional assessment measures, they pigeonhole a kid into thinking that's what they are only. And this type of model allows kids to see so much more about themselves and explore so much more about themselves. And that's exciting work to me.
Thank you so much, Brandy. There's a lot of appreciation in the chat right now for both of these districts. And then we had a question about getting the links to the dashboards. I said that you would send them out an email after the session is over with the recording. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay. Hey, Brandy, I'd like to pose a question. First of all, to the Grant and Washington County teams, thank you so much. I have a question about just sustainability as you kind of go forward. Like, what are your district plans for bringing on new teachers into this new system, or bringing on new administrators that might come from somewhere else into this new system, and new parents that come from outside? How do you integrate them into the understanding if they weren't part of that original design? Or, so what are some things that you're thinking about along those lines?
For us, our district values this enough that for our K-8 students, we have a commander ready course that is a part of our specials rotation. And so students have that class once a week. We talk about the competencies. We talk about how different careers use those competencies so that they are great at the work that they're doing. We also work with them to build their portfolios and their celebrations of learning through that. So that's one of the things we do to sustain. And I think the best part of this is that each school owns their celebrations of learning, and it is embedded in the fibers. And so when we did this the first year, as somebody who's feels like we're always saying, you got to do this thing, you got to do this thing. We had a teacher that looked and said, even if you told me I didn't have to do this anymore, I would still want to do it. And that's the goal. When teachers want to do this work because it's rewarding, because they get to celebrate their kids, it sustains itself. It doesn't have to be a mandate, but we do have an early teacher or an early career cadre. We do have teacher onboarding, and we do present this as part of who we are and how we do life together in Washington County. So they get that through there. And then we also provide information through our family engagement nights, and parents talk about it. Social media blows up during the celebrations of learning because everybody's proud.
Another really important aspect I forgot, and she made me think about it, is bring your board along with you. Don't do it to them. Make sure that they understand the why behind what you're doing and how you're doing it and that type of thing, because they will get questions. And I mean board members. I don't mean like school, like district personnel. You got to bring them along as well. But I'm just saying, like all means all. You can't just leave a subgroup out and hope that they get it. And we come back to the table when we see something's not working. I do think that commander ready piece, where even kindergarten students get access to the competencies at the age of 5, as soon as the first day of school, they get access. So then it's just as important as the math and the reading, but then it's with their specials class. So they see it as valued time, because music, art, PE, and then our 4th rotation is commander ready. So every K-8 student gets commander ready every day.
And then for us, many similarities, but what I would add to that is we were hopeful that this could be a recruiting tool, so that if a teacher were shopping for a district, one of the things that I'm hopeful is that people want to work in places in which their beliefs align. So I feel like we have put the beliefs of our community and our values out on public display. So making sure that we're intentional in new teacher induction, in teacher interviews and principal interviews, and all the opportunities that we have, administrative retreats, we are talking about why this exists and what it says about who we are and how important it is that we stay true to this, because it isn't just a silo. It's not just the experts around the table. It's the entire community participating. And I think that we have seen our school board settle down. We've certainly seen our board meetings settle down. We've taken aggressive steps towards transparency, and this is no small part of that. And so I think it has really done a lot to heal the relationship between our community and our schools. And I think if we can keep our eye on the prize, it will be very sustainable, because it's the work that we value, and it's the stuff that we want our kids to have as having been with us.
Thank you, Brandy. There's one last comment if you want to take that in the chat. This is to both of you. So Alexis, thanking you first and foremost for your commitment and for sharing, but she would like you to speak on, if there was a district that was just getting started with the work, what would you say is the most impactful first step that they might make on their journey when they're just starting?
I'll just say real quick, I was so blessed that I had the profile as the kind of anchor piece for my work. So it was so much easier to, as we developed community surveys and got feedback from the public, do you believe that we are delivering on what our profile says? Do you believe our profile is still relevant? I think every conversation follows the profile, because the profile identifies what you want for kids in your community.
And I would piggyback off of that. And I agree that having that shared language and what is important to the community is a great first step. but I also would say, what do you have the capacity to support? Do you want to start with celebrations of learning and building students' capacity within competencies, identifying competencies, and then creating those experiences for students? Or is it more important for you to have the data and the dashboard to present to your community so that you can then decide, okay, here's our data. What are the competencies that we want to improve in areas that are significant for us? So I think it really is your local context and how your community sees this work and how they value it.
Thank you. Such great content here today. And I would just like to take us back to the three big ideas that we were listening for in this conversation around what was just emphasized from both counties on where to start and how to move forward is the vibrant learning experiences with students, every student, innovation in assessments. When teachers own the assessment, they want that type of assessment. We heard that. And we heard tons about the collaboration with community and how important that is to gaining trust and breaking down barriers and the reciprocity of I get something and you get something, and if we listen and come together for kids. So we really, really appreciate your all's time here today. Thank you for hopping on. Grant County, Washington County. Give them all the love, give them all the reactions. They're doing fantastic work, and thank you for being leaders in the state.